everybody. Welcome back to Tattoo Homewreckers, a podcast where we talk about tattoos, life, and everything in between. My name is Callista, and this is...
Gaia. Talk about the afterlife.
Oh! New thing to put on the intro. That's hilarious. Tattoos, life, afterlife.
And everything in between.
Yeah, it's our 25th episode, so happy 25th. We're going to talk about some serious stuff today.
Yeah. I'm not going to give trigger warnings for anything. You can read the description if you're like, oh no, there's lots of stuff. Because as Callie stated so eloquently a minute ago when we were talking about this episode, we are here to
talk about suicidal thoughts and destigmatize them. And maybe not destigmatize them the way that you think. Because I feel like there was a huge internet movement that happened where, everyone was destigmatizing mental health awareness and stuff like that. And that's great. And I obviously am very appreciative of that. But by this episode, we are going to destigmatize it in the sense that we're talking about suicidal thoughts. And I personally feel like people put too much weight on them. And
I completely agree with that.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that, unfortunately, I mean, this may rub people the wrong way, but I'm just going to say it how it is. A lot of people think that them having suicidal thoughts or having used to have suicidal thoughts makes them special. And I would have to disagree. I think everyone goes through it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then I just want to state that just because you have suicidal thoughts does not mean that, like, if it's an occasional, it does not mean you need medication. It does not mean there is a larger problem in your life. It just means that we are feeling creatures. We are not thinking creatures. We are feeling creatures.
I love that.
And that sometimes the feelings get bigger than what we think we can, like, handle in that moment.
Yes.
And so that's when you do the responsible thing. It's what I did earlier this week. And you call a friend, and that friend can say the best, worst things ever to you. So I guess I'll just dive right in.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I guess I kind of knew that I was, like, slipping into a slightly depressive state. I have never been diagnosed with depression. I do not feel like I have, like, chronic depression, anything of that sort.
But
maybe. I'm not a, like, doctor, so, but I have just been having more, like, and I think this is also just part of being in your mid-30s. And my dogs are getting older as I'm having more thoughts about mortality and how, like, sad, like, how fleeting all moments are. And those have been coming up. And then Caboose and I got into a fight. And let me tell you what, you, like, threaten to kill yourself, you'll win a fight right there.
Oh my God.
Like, that's your trump card. But no, seriously, don't do that.
Don't do that. It was a joke, everyone.
It's a very tasteless joke. But I can make that joke about myself. But yeah, and our fight had nothing to do with what happened after that. It was just that, like, it just was essentially a catalyst for, like, hey, like, I just broke. Like, there was so much emotion. A lot of stuff has been happening. And even when a lot of stuff isn't happening, it's totally normal to just get in these states.
Yes, I wanted to interrupt for a second. It's like the tip of the iceberg kind of thing. A lot of these things build up. And like I had noticed the day before your episode that, like, you were up to, like, your nose in the waters is what we kind of call it. And, like, right before you're about to drown. Yeah. And I was like, okay, yeah. So, like, things are going on. And then, if you want to talk about that night, you had a fight. And then she, had an episode. And you texted me and you're like, hey, can you come sit with me? I'm in my closet.
Yeah,
I shouldn't be alone right now.
Yeah, so for me, when stuff gets too much, I am very, like, sensory driven. So, like, lights are a lot. So even, like, recording the podcast is oftentimes very overstimulating for me because we have bright studio lights. And I'm very stimulated by, like, lights and sound, and I'm very sensory. So even, like, the textures of things really, like, just send me off or they comfort me. And so when, like, just everything gets too much, when life gets too much for me, or I just need to decompress at the end of the day, I go and sit in my closet. It's not like a tiny closet. It's not like a weird, like, that's fine if you sit in your tiny closet, because I did that too when I was a teenager.
It's not a weird joke either, her being in the closet.
Yeah, it's not a weird joke of me being in the closet.
She actually is in the closet.
I'm genuinely, and, like, it is my comfort space. It is small enough, like, Caboose, built us a beautiful desk so I can have an office to do work in, and my hole punch and stapler and all of my art stuff live in the closet. I have
a whole setup.
Yeah, I've got a lamp in there. It's technically like a wall thing that he installed so that way I could sit on the floor, and I have a shelf for my coffee, everything.
Yeah.
I'm surprised, honestly, I haven't put a coffee pot in there yet. But I was in the closet because when Caboose and I were having a fight, and let's also just do a sidebar.
Yeah.
Fighting in relationships is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. If you do not believe me, please go look up the Gottman Institute and read some of their books.
Oh my gosh.
And we are really good at having like fights now. So we get a lot of clarity, but he was completely flooded. I was completely flooded. I could not function. And it just was that last little, straw that broke the camel's back. Yeah. And I went and I sat in my closet and I could not come back down. Like no matter, like all of my self-soothing things were not working. And so I decided at that point that I should call a friend because everything was too much. And it just seemed like being in this world was pointless. And that like it would be much easier for me, not for everyone that would have to deal with the catastrophic like ramifications of a instantaneous selfish decision on my part, that I was like, hey, because once again, like if you suffer with this all the time, please, for the love of God, get help. I don't. It happens every couple years, and it usually like takes a couple days or weeks to come back out of, but it's not something that like I feel that at this point I need to seek professional help. However, if you think you need help, for the love of God, go get it.
Yes, we encourage it.
Yes.
For sure.
But yeah, so then I texted her and was like, hey, I can't be alone right now. Can you come sit with me? And then she sat in the closet and I cried a bunch and was telling her but just like how everything hurt and it was all too much. And then told her how I had planned on handling the situation, to which she laughed because it's ridiculous.
By plan to handle the situation, she means planned to end things.
Yes.
Her life.
Yes.
Right.
In a very ridiculous way. And I'll just explain that it involved, a weapon, and it involved
two weight vests
to make sure that there wasn't ricochet and no damage was done. And like, that like the house would be fine. So
she had it planned onto a T.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I realized while I was in that planning stage that I was like, hey, the last little bit of my brain that was still functioning and wasn't just in what I honestly like to say is a self-preservation. I don't think of that functioning side as my self-preservation. I think of the feeling side as my self-preservation. Oh. And so when it was just trying to be like, look, I'm in too much pain to deal with this right now. That to me was that preservation. And then I have this logical side that was like, bitch, you should call a friend because like you want to make this choice right now and you won't be around to regret it. But all of your pain that you're currently feeling now, you will put on all of the people that love you.
Well, she hadn't realized it then.
No, I hadn't realized that at that point. I just knew that I was like, you can't be by yourself.
There was a part of you that felt like it was irresponsible to be by yourself. Yeah. And I'm really happy that you texted me. Yeah. I had no idea. I just kind of assumed that we were going to talk about the fight. I had no idea that it was bigger than the fight, you know?
And so I texted her, and I'm just going to sidebar real fast about like, because I'm sure some of you will be like, well, that's weird. Why didn't you text Caboose? And I got his permission to talk about this. And I texted Callista because I knew that because of the work we've done and because of the work she's done, that I could call her in this moment and she could come be in the closet with me and it would not affect her in the same way that it would affect him. Because like when him and I talked about it after the fact, because I'll be really clear, I don't feel that way. If he called her over me, I would be mad jealous that I'm like, wait, you had like a horrible time and you called somebody else.
Right.
But when we talked about after the fact, he was like, you did the most responsible thing. He's like, because for me, that situation is very triggering. He's like, so I could not handle that. He's like, so at that point, to put it in Brené's sense, which is when someone's in emotional turmoil, they're down in a well and you have to make sure that you can get the fuck out of the well. And
before you hop in to the well with that person.
Because that person's stuck. I was stuck in a well.
Yes.
And I couldn't get myself out, which is why I said, let me call for help. And I knew that calling Caboose would mean that he would then also be in a well. And then you would just have two people in a fucking well. Neither one of them would be able to get out. And rescuing 2 people would be a lot more work than just calling the correct person.
Right.
And so I just personally loved his like humility and humanity around it, that he was like, no, you did the right thing. He's like, because I would have gotten stuck in that well with you. Mm-hmm. And he was like, that's something that he said he will for sure bring up with his therapist to make sure that like that doesn't continue to be something that's triggering for him, but that's something that he can get the tools so that way it doesn't put him down in the well with me.
Right.
Whereas like I instinctually knew that in that moment that she was the correct person to call, because she won't get in the, like, she'll get in the well with me, but this bitch got flashlight, snacks. She's got a rope. She's got a fucking propeller to get us out. She's got a fucking like bungee cord situation. We are getting the fuck out of the well, and we got out there really fast.
Right. And fast is never like, that's never the goal. It's just whenever that person is ready. But yeah, I had all the emotional tools, I guess, to be able to take care of us both.
Can I just state really fast? If you guys picked up on that noise, that probably sounds like a fart on the on the mic. That was Bailey shaking her ears. I just realized that like that probably sounds like a fart
just
on the
ripped
mic.
a fat one just now, just talking. That's so fucking
Well, I
funny.
get nervous farts, and so then talking about stuff like this, I haven't farted yet on the podcast, but I was like, oh no, I had to leave the room before we started this episode to go fart because I get nervous farts.
Yeah.
Shout out for anyone else that gets nervous farts.
I've never, but any hoozles.
There you go.
Yeah. So this episode is talking about, you know, like if you guys didn't know, like both of us have suffered from like suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say suffered, have been like, I don't know, just subject to.
Yeah. And I honestly believe that everyone does.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of people do not have the platform to be honest about it because it tends to be something that when you say it, there's big reactions to it.
Yeah, and you know, if you are ever the friend that is being phoned, I mean, I trust you guys. I trust all of our listeners to know how to react in that situation because that's your friend and you know them better than I do, obviously. But like for me, whenever someone's in crisis, I really try my best to make sure that like my feelings aren't added to their burden. Yes. Of like them already, because I mean you're already the person who's calling you down in the well, they're already like they've been down there for God knows how long, they're hungry, emotionally just like fucked, you know, you don't want to add to that.
Yeah, and you're scared, and the last thing you want is like I think
the other person to freak out. The person who's rescuing you to freak out. Right?
Which is, I think, where people get nervous to call people because, like, for me, I was like, okay, well, I knew I couldn't call Caboose because I'm like, if I call him, we just got 2 motherfuckers down the well right now.
Exactly. Now,
and then, so for me at this point to be able to call you was great because then it was like, okay, cool. I know I have a lifeline of someone who's going to be like, thank you for calling me.
No, absolutely. And it was such a hilarious talk, oddly enough, because at one point, I mean, she's, you know, sobbing and she's like, I just don't understand what the point of life is anymore. And I deadpan went, I think the point of life is to suffer. And immediately she started laughing and she's like, gee, thanks. And I started laughing so hard because I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
What did I do?
So just remember, kids, the point of life is to suffer.
No, for sure. And it was just so funny because I don't know, I showed up as authentic as I can because there is no cheat code to helping someone in the middle of being in this well, in the middle of like obviously in emotional turmoil, like I'm ready to kill myself. Like there's no cheat code, there is no script I can give you. All I can say is just show up as authentic as you possibly can. And that's me showing up authentically is like kind of adding to the problem, but not, you know.
Yeah, I think for me it didn't add to the problem because it was that, I don't know, sorry, there's like fluff on my fucking lip.
That's okay.
It felt like somebody saw and understood the amount of suffering. So instead of, it wasn't like
instead of hiding it.
Yeah, you weren't hiding it. You weren't like, look at all these great, amazing things you have in your life. Because I was down in that well and I'd already done that. I'd already been like, look, you have a home you love. You have a career you love. You have people that love you. You have a community. Like I have you guys, you know, for every single person that takes the time, which is the one thing you cannot get back, to listen to us talk about real stuff and also dumb stuff. Like I have so much love in my life that like at that point, it felt like it wasn't enough. Like, I couldn't see it. And so even going through and being like, look at all this, at that point, you're like, but everyone's life would be better if I wasn't around. Right. And so for someone to then say, I think the point is suffering, it meant that the way I was feeling was not wrong.
Yeah.
That
totally
like
valid.
In that moment, what I felt was correct. And it was just normal. And so it normalized this idea of like, holy shit, why does this hurt so bad when someone's like, well, you know, it hurts. It just fucking sucks.
Yeah. And that's the point of like the whole rescue mission. It's not to get that person out of the well as fast as possible, because I think that's what a lot of people like struggle with. And like Brene talks about it, Glennon and Abby on their podcast talk about it, how like a lot of people will be confronted with this uncomfortable emotion coming from a loved one. And I think I talk about it a lot too. Your first like instinctual reaction as an animal, you see someone in your pack suffering and you want to end the suffering right then and there. You want to fix it. However, when someone's down in the well, there is no way to properly like yank someone out of the well if they're not going to cooperate to begin with. You know, and you need to let them feel whatever it is that they're feeling and know that it's valid. Because I wasn't going to sugarcoat it. I'm like, yeah, it fucking blows. I've been there. Yeah. That's awful. And it sucks that you're there right now, because we were on 2 totally different wavelengths. And I even said this in the closet with her. I was like, we're on 2 very different wavelengths. Like, she was just in the rough, in the well, blind, in her suffering, in the void. And I was over here going, I'm so grateful.
Yeah, she literally, I was explaining to her how it felt, that it feels like this, like, just warm, like, bath of just black abyss that, like, I just want to stay there because I know that coming out is going to be so painful. And I was like, and it just hurts. And I know that, like, continuing is going to hurt so much more. And then she was like, I'm so grateful. I can't even say it without laughing now. But it was also like, it was funny because after the fact I was talking to Caboose about it, because I had texted him to be like, hey, like, I am in struggle. Yeah. And I just told him that I was like, I am thinking about not being around. And he was like, I don't know how to take that. And then I'm sure he heard us laughing. Oh, what happened?
Oh. Wait, it's still going, oddly enough.
I don't know. We might have lost picture.
If we did,
technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties. Should we pause?
We will be right back, guys.
Still up.
Did them work?
I don't know. I mean, we could just not have video for this part, which is totally normal and fine. Happens in a lot of productions, but
okay, hold up.
That was really fucking funny. We're back. Stop. Why do you have to clap your hands so hard?
I don't know. Sorry about that technical difficulty there.
We always have technical difficulties on, like, the most important episodes. It's so funny.
Yep. But now you need to explain, because we had to call in.
We had to phone a friend.
Our producer, and then explained that we made a joke about farting on it.
Are we really saying this on the fucking
Yes,
podcast?
I want to hear what you just said about that sound.
Okay, so Gaia was all like, yeah, there's a clip with Callie farting. And I said it wasn't me, it was Bailey. And she was explaining that it was, unless you know it's a dog's ears, it sounds like farting. And Caboose was like, what? And I'm like, yeah, like, you know, cheeks are clapping. You know, like, those cheeks are like... You ever fart like that?
Cheeks are clapping.
They like clap, you know? Anyways.
I was dying.
It's that important. Oh my God.
Thank you so much. Whatever. We need to lighten up this very heavy episode.
Memorialized forever. True. Yep. Okay, so where we left off, you said that you were explaining to Caboose. What happened?
What? You were talking about Brene and Glennon.
No, we were talking about Caboose. Actually, you said that you... we're explaining to Caboose something. Fuck. Oh no, we forgot. I had it saved in my brain so that way I know exactly where we left off, and now I forgot it.
Y'all, it's been maybe like 2 minutes that we were paused.
God, why am I like this? Anyways, I guess we can move on. I'm sure people will be like, well, maybe we'll think of it like in the middle of this episode.
I'm sure we'll think of it.
Or we'll come back to it.
But yeah, we were talking about how like Brene and Glennon, that's what you were saying, and then everything died.
Right.
And I don't know what you were going to say about Brene and Glennon, about, like, I'm assuming not getting down the well with people unless you can get the fuck out of the well.
That's not where I was heading, but absolutely,
okay.
we do need to say that. If you feel like you're unequipped to handle, someone who is obviously really going through it, then don't take that responsibility.
Mm-mm.
That's totally fine to not take that responsibility. If anything, it's more of a danger to that person and yourself. If you feel like you're not able to be equipped to get both of you out of the well, don't get in there in the first place. And I think there's a lot of shame behind that, and I don't think there's any need for shame around it. If someone is like, oh my God, I really need help, and just have enough grace for yourself and know that, like, when to step away, and like, all I used to do when I felt unequipped was, maybe we should see someone,
Yeah.
I'll go with you. I'll
That's
be your
really
emotional
smart.
support. Like, we should figure something out
Yeah.
so that way you can talk to a professional about it, because I unfortunately cannot help. But in this situation, through saying somehow the wrong and right things at the same time.
Oh, that's what we were talking about. How Caboose probably thought that
he
we
heard us
were
laughing.
just having a good time.
Yeah.
Because she was with me for, I don't know, maybe like 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was just lots of laughter because I described in detail to her like how I plan on doing it, and it was ridiculous. And so then she kept making fun of me because I was like, yeah, 2 weight vests. And she was like, so we're down 2 weight vests and a person? And I'm like, bitch, we have 4 weight vests. So there's still 2 weight vests for the other people.
I said, I don't care. Don't touch the weight vest.
Yeah. And like, yeah, like, Jesus Christ. And so we were able to laugh through it, which I think laughter is, obviously the cure for like things like that. Yeah, that stupid thing of laughter is the best medicine.
Yes.
I really do think that helped me. And then that being said, even though I was out of the well, or the way that I describe it myself, which is that it's this deep, just black abyss of like a warm lake. And, if you guys have listened to the previous episodes of me being up on the wall and being that person that's always like the guard, and I'm like the strength of like a lot of situations, it's one of those things that I try to explain it in a sense of like, when I'm there, it's really hard for me to see my people because that wall stands between me and my people. And so I am in this. And so it's like I spend my life like walking on this water's edge. And I think we all do. I think that like everyone's always ever like knows in this ever present of like death and mortality and all of that. And then it's really hard in that moment to then be like, hey, I can't stay here because like my people are on the other side. So I need to go back out, and I'm not fully back on the wall yet. I would say right now I'm like most of the way there. It's been a couple days, but the way that I was talking to Callie, cause like the next day I just had to go to work, and I had to show up at work, and it was bad, and it was rough, and it sucked. And it was like, I just put in my 2 weeks notice of like managing the studio, like being a co-manager, and had to like sit through that discussion and knew that I was like, hey, like I am not back to being my full self. I am not even half the way there.
Yeah.
But I'm out of the immediate danger, but I'm still not in that point. And I was just basically like using Callie as a life raft, like to like tether me to that side where all my people are, to be like, hey, she's my like touchstone and through this. So like throughout the day, she was really conscious to be like pretty physically close to me. And like typically at work, like we interact, but we're not like always sitting together. And that day she was like, hey, I'm going to like be close. And there was a couple points where I had to go out to my car and cry. And once again, I don't have the luxury with my job to like not be fake ass bullshit customer service.
Yeah.
And which is also why we wanted to talk about it, because like I want to be able to normalize the fact that we all go through this, and sometimes you just got to show up at fucking work the next day.
Absolutely. And crush your tattoos because...
Yeah. And then still have to do really good work because that's just your job.
Right. And that's part of the industry that people don't talk about. We're just talking about that too. It's a lot of pressure, and people crack under this pressure. And if you're a client out there and you're like, oh my gosh, please reschedule if that ever happens, I thank you for that. I appreciate that. However, we still do need to make money.
Yeah. I still have to pay bills.
Yep. Yeah. We still, at some point, and don't get me wrong, we're going to crush your tattoo because I don't know about you, but I have the best fucking series when I'm sad. But there was no other option. And you said something, the analogy of like the beach and everything, and we'll go back to that. I want to actually change direction really fast. You said something after the day after, it's hard, to phone a friend because you're seen as the strong one.
Yeah.
So it was such a vulnerable place to be in, to like, here, sit with me in this closet while I'm suffering. And that's why I felt so grateful. That's why I was so grateful. And that we were completely different wavelengths, but I was just filled with gratitude because I was like, thank you for letting me be here.
But the fact that you said thank you made it feel like I wasn't a burden. It made it feel like I, like, in a really weird way, because you said thank you, it felt like I gave you a gift.
It was a gift.
To be like, hey, I am in deep pain, like just immense, describable misery. And
in the
you
void.
said, hey, thank you so much for showing me this part of you. And so it was received as a gift, which then made it like being known as like the, okay, I'm the strong friend. I'm the person that like has to be, I'm always the person that gets that phone call. Like we've talked about that before. Like I have driven like strangers to clinics because that they're like, okay, this bitch can handle it.
Yep.
And like, it's part of that same thing of like being blamed, is that people are like, okay, I know that she can handle the weight of being blamed for stuff. So then oftentimes, and it was one of the things Caboose and I had talked about actually, was that like, I realized that like when I was talking to him, I was like, it makes me feel like everyone just loves me because I'm strong.
Yeah.
And cannot love me like when I am not strong. So when I come off the wall, I am not loved. Right. And so there's that constant pressure. And when I was talking to him about how he was like, he's like, I'm glad you didn't call me. He's like, because I would have just been in the well with you. He's like, because all it does is it spirals me back to like when I had those thoughts. Yep. And I realized that was the same thing with the strength, was that like, where people get upset with me for not being strong, it's not because I'm not strong. It's because they're then faced with their own like weaknesses. Yeah. And when you decide that somebody is like the epitome of something, which like that's usually the number one thing I get is like, oh, well, you're really strong. And so when that is then like knocked off that stupid pedestal we've talked about, then you're like, oh shit, if she's not always strong, how weak am I? And so it gives you this like almost shitty like reflection of yourself.
That, and it forces people to adjust the way they act around you. I feel like it's the same thing as like how a lot of non-binary people, the reason why people struggle with non-binary people is because they don't know how to treat you.
Yeah, we had that talk because I was that shitty person that was like, oh, are you a boy? Are you a girl? I can't tell.
Right.
And then when I don't remember whose book or podcast I heard it on.
I think it was We Can Do Hard Things. Yeah. And it was a guest that like introduced that like not theory, but the thought process of like the reason why people get so upset at non-binary people is because we all have these set of rules on how to treat men and a set of rules on how to treat women. So when you are neither, people freak out. Yeah. And so it not only is like the strong person in your life showing you a moment of weakness uncomfortable because it highlights like, oh shit, how weak am I then? But like also they just don't know, they have to readjust their perception of you. And I think that's where a lot of people also struggle. Yeah. That readjustment. And my thing is like, you don't deserve to get to know someone if that's that big of a deal. Yeah. If you can't see the humanity in people, and like if you're not like flexible on adjusting your perception on getting to know someone even deeper, then like fuck you. Like,
but then being that person whose perception is, or like who fears the perception is going to be changed, I think that's also like for me where, like I went so long not talking about like my eating disorder and like my struggles and stuff like that with so many people, is because then it's like, fuck, I don't want people to not think that I'm like not strong, which is kind of stupid because it's like, bitch, you show up every single day. So like the fact that you are struggling with stuff and still showing up
and crushing your fucking
is
tattoos.
The epitome of strength. Well, but in that moment, you're like, fuck, I don't want anyone to be like, oh, you poor thing, and like have pity.
The epitome of strength for me too, I guess like my definition has definitely changed with like being exposed to Brené's work and Glennon's work, the epitome of strength to me is being able to share those moments with those people, those raw, vulnerable moments, because it's so hard. As someone who like tends to, my first knee-jerk reaction is to isolate whenever anything like hits the fan for me emotionally. I think that takes so much more courage and strength to share that with people that you love, because that's how you build deeper connections.
That reminds me of that quote you said earlier about like Brené's stuff. Yes. Y'all, I love this so much because we talk a lot about like emotional work and like self-improvement, and I will get frustrated because there'll be people that read the same literature as us, but then I'm like, dude, you read it, like you listened to this, like I don't understand. And then Callie dropped this knowledge bomb on me earlier, and
there's a difference between people who read Brené and then people who act Brené. And so like if you're gonna read something, then you better fucking follow through with it. You know, if people are gonna lay out these cheat codes of like emotional growth or like anything to do with physical improvement, it's the same thing as like a coach can only take you so far if you actually do the fucking work. You know what I mean? If you're not actually doing the work, they can only take you so fucking far. You know? And it's the same thing with Brené's literature. It's the same thing with Glennon Doyle's. It's the same thing with anything. It can apply to anything. But my point is, if you're going to read it, act it, bro. If you're going to sign yourself up for this, you better fucking exemplify it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, I mean, what a fucking week.
Yeah. I guess the one last thing that I want to talk about is, like I said, like I'm not 100% back. I'm in this place, I think Glennon said it best, where she talks about these like depressive states where like when you come back out of them, the world is like brighter. And I'm not quite there yet, but the way I was explaining to Callie, because like the next day, even though I'm like, hey, like I'm out of the water, I'm on the shore. Like I can't climb up yet, but I'm on the shore and I'm doing my best not to get back in the fucking water, but like I'm here. And it's that I'm so like I'm an instantaneous person. I think most of us are. So I want to just feel better really quickly. And then that's what our whole world is. It's like 10 quick fixes for this.
Yeah.
Like fix your mental health by doing 7 minutes of a breathing exercise. Yeah. And the way that I was explaining to her that it sucks because when you're in this place, it feels like a really long, shitty plane ride. And fighting the plane ride and fucking just being like a shit ass about it is not going to make it any better. So like, even though I had to show up for work and I was not emotionally prepared and not capable of handling people, like I said, I had to go to my car a couple times to like cry a little bit just because it was all too much. And especially for someone like myself, that's very sensory overload. And we are in a busy shop and there's lots of voices and there's loud music and there's just a lot. And my lights
it's like going
bright.
To war.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. It felt like I was in like emotional like war. Just it was awful. And then I got home and I was like, okay, so if you were on a plane ride, what would you need right now? And for me, like one of the things, the very first thing we do whenever we get off a plane ride is I need warm food that like makes me comforted. So like Caboose was gracious enough to then make me food because I was not even capable of like operating the stove at that point. And I put on a show that would just, weirdly enough, Handmaid's Tale. I needed a show that like I could connect with the like actors that like it's actors that I really, really like because I don't have necessarily comfort shows. I have like comfort actors and Elizabeth Moss, like, oh my God, she crushes it. And so I watched that and I just was like under a warm fuzzy blanket and I had Bailey with me and I was just trying to treat it the same way I would on a shitty plane ride, which is I'm just going to self-soothe. I'm just going to be like, hey, I can't rush this. I don't know how long it's going to take to get from here to Dubai.
Yeah.
But I know that I'm going to land and I'm going to get off this fucking plane and then life is going to be great again. And just being able to just ride it just like that, to be like, hey, I can't rush this. Like, just because I'm fucking mad that I'm still on an airplane does not mean I'm going to get there any faster.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You're always some level of uncomfortable on an airplane. So that's why I love that analogy because, like, okay, I'm going to be some level of uncomfortable for X amount of time. There is no rushing the plane. So I'm going to do what I can to be as comfortable as possible. And that's what you did. Yeah. Like, I'm uncomfortable, but like, I'm going to make this as best as I can.
Yeah.
And there it is, Elizabeth Moss.
Yeah. And I think that's it, is like, and being able to have that language to tell people, like, look, I'm not off the plane yet. I'm not. Like, right now, I feel mostly better. So I am like, I'm on the tarmac. We landed.
Yeah.
We know that like the good shit is about to happen. That like I'm about to get off and take that fucking breath and be like, thank God. And then stretch my legs and feel good. But right now, and probably until tomorrow morning, because it usually helps to have like a couple days of sleep, I will just be I'm sitting on the tarmac right now, really excited because I can see the fucking exit. I can see that we landed. But like the other day, nah, bitch, we were just looking at fucking clouds.
Yeah. No.
And not pretty ones.
No, and being uncomfortable. And it's hard because, like, I mean, being the person outside of the actual episode, it's super hard to not, like, mother or, like, hover. You know what I mean? And we talked about this a little bit yesterday during this, like, Ted Lasso episode where Rebecca comforts, if you guys haven't watched Ted Lasso, it's so fucking good. But there's a scene where Ted has a panic attack and then Rebecca, his boss, meets him outside and, like, helps calm him down. And he's like, I think I'm going to go home. And she goes, okay, like, you know, you go home. And I read the scene completely differently just because I read it in the sense of, like, where I'm at emotionally right now, where Ted, she's like, do you want to take my car? Like, do you want me to walk with you? And he's like, no, I'm going to walk alone. She goes, okay, please be safe. And he's walking, right? Walks away from her. And there's a scene where she, like, has to, and she's such a good actress. And she, like, physically, you can watch her, like, hold herself back, restrain. And for me, in that moment, I was like, that's the hardest thing about being the person who helps, is, like, watching someone who's still struggling and letting them do that. And, like, there's always going to be a part of me that's like, oh, maybe we should, like, call you out of work. Should I, like, tell people to just, like, be chill and, like, not talk to her for a while? And I'm like, no, I can't. Like, I just have to literally help, like, let you do you and just go out into the wolves. Yeah. And just, like, even though you're suffering, I'm like, okay, no, like, this is, like, the natural progression of things. Because I feel like a lot of the times when you do try to intervene, it just makes it so much worse.
Oh, yeah. At that point, like, you've just taken this plane off course. Now we're going to be here way longer.
Way longer.
Like, you decided, you were like, yo, let me fly this plane for you. And you're not a fucking pilot. Like,
exactly.
You just gotta let me fucking ride it out. And then the good thing, though, is that for me, it's that, like, you are close enough that, like, you know, when I got, like, a just fucking shit ton of questions asked at work that I was not, like, I couldn't think enough to answer questions. And Callie just started answering questions for me. And she was like, I got this conversation. Just give it here. Because I was like, I can't. Like, if my client wanted to change a single thing about her tattoo, I was just going to sob on her. So, like, you still provide a defense.
Like a buffer.
But you don't stand in front of me. You're like, here, I am here for you, back here if you need me. And, like, you saw, like, when I got asked those tons of questions, I just looked at you and was like, I fucking can't. And you just stepped in and you didn't make it a thing. And so it's like this, you allow me to, like, go, but you also are like, hey, like, I'm here if you need me. And I think that's probably the best thing you can do when someone's in this place.
Absolutely. And trust, like, I'm fighting every ounce of me not to just, like, tell people, like, hey, listen, like, Gaia's going through it. You need to fuck off for a second. And then I will let you know when you can fuck back on. That's such a weird. Maybe not do that, but I'll let you know when everything's cool. You'll be able to tell. So it takes every ounce in me not to, like, be that person, but it is so important to let that person, like, stand up on their own 2 feet. And if they stumble a little bit, that's fine. Because when you went out into the shop, I knew what you were doing. I was like, okay, well, she's either driving away and going home.
It was so tempting, but I left my phone in the shop, so I couldn't. But I definitely had that thought of, like, what if I just left? What if I just, like, I'm so sorry to my client. No one would know. But, like, I would just leave, and they would turn to Callie and be like, what? And she'd be like, I don't know. I'll watch for the Ring camera to see if she got home. Otherwise, she could be driving the Grand Canyon right now.
Literally. Don't steal my idea. That's so funny. So that was my plan.
Because it's pretty.
She was telling me her way of ending things, and my plan, I was all like, I shouldn't be telling you this right now, but here's my plan. Here was my plan. I was just going to drive out to the Grand Canyon and end things, and, like, hike into the wilderness and things, and then have the animals eat me.
this bitch doesn't hike.
No.
So, like, when she says hike, like, she thinks when we sit out in our friend's garden that's camping.
Oh, it's so funny.
Because they have, like,
it's a joke. That's a joke. I promise I don't think that's actual camping. It's a joke that I play into because it's funny. But yeah, no, that was my plan. So don't steal my thing, please.
I was just going to drive because I was like, oh man, I want to drive for a long time because it's like running away from all my problems.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's moments, again, you just have to let them stumble a little bit and like know that they've got it because they are human beings and they're strong and they've got it. And however, you know, like I said, you know your friends better than I know your friends. So if you seriously think that your friend is in danger, then like maybe intervene, call someone, call a family member.
Absolutely.
Do something.
Call someone that can do something.
Yes, call someone that can do something. I will trust that you guys will make the best decision. But yeah, that's what happened this week.
Yeah.
In our lives, in our crazy, crazy lives.
Yep. So I would say maybe like this week, just think of how, in case you ever are that person that's called, how you would want it handled for you.
Yeah.
And hold on to that. So that way, you know, like, hey, it doesn't always look like saying, oh, but all these great things. Because honestly, when you're down there, you don't want to hear that.
No. And again, that's just another way of deflecting, I think.
Yeah.
And it's tempting. Trust me. It's tempting to be like, well, but like, we have a podcast and it's beautiful. Or like, but no, just don't. Just let them feel how it is.
Yeah. And just show up authentically. Because if that person called you and you know that you can handle the weight of what they have to tell you, your real, genuine response is what they want. Her telling me that she was so grateful for that moment did more to pull me out of that well than I can ever fully explain. Same as her making fun of my idea of how I was going to handle the situation made it so much better in that moment because it showed the like absurdity of like just how ridiculous our brains can be sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so like, because she showed up in her full authentic self, it allowed me to like have that tether back to reality.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think the only question I have for our beautiful wrecking balls is, I would love to know, if you guys are comfortable with sharing, of course, what an emotional hangover looks like to you and what you like to do on your uncomfortable flight.
Yeah.
Your
eat mac and cheese, watch Elizabeth Moss.
Oh, yeah. On your uncomfortable emotional flight, what do you like to do to make it a little bit more bearable? For me, it's when I get in that place, it is definitely mac and cheese, veggie chicken nuggets, delicious. It's a lot of it is actually junk food. I love me some junk food. Yeah. So that's mine. But let us know.
Well, we ate Taco Bell last night, and that helped me feel much better. And we watched a great movie, so that helps.
Ted Lasso. Yeah, it was good.
Yep.
So yeah, let us know.
Yeah. Thank you so much. If you made it all this way, know that we love you so much, and you are a very important part of our lives. Like, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for being on this journey with us.
Yep. And we'll see you again next week.
Bye.
Bye. God damn, I always hit the wrong button.